The average American household throws away roughly $1,500 in food every single year. And that's just the food that makes it into the kitchen. The food in the emergency closet, the stuff bought after a hurricane warning, stacked after a power outage, hauled home after a news cycle, your neighbor does it every time. Storm on the radar, cart cleared, closet filled, problem solved. 2 years later, half of it is past code, a third of it is the wrong food entirely, and the motivation that drove the whole thing has evaporated along with the emergency. The problem was never motivation. It was method. Here is what most people in this space have never found. There is a food storage system in the United States that has been rigorously documented, publicly accessible. It produces food that genuinely lasts 20, 25, even 30 years. Not marketing copy. Documented. Tested. Verified. It comes from the Mormon Church. And before you click away, understand this. They have been telling everyone exactly what to do, member or not. No affiliation required. That system is what we're unpacking today. 12 items ranked from good to foundational, with the exact shelf lives, the science behind every single one, and the complete protocol that makes food that never expires actually possible. And here is the proximity hook that should keep you watching. One of these 12 items is almost certainly already in your pantry right now. You probably bought it with the right instinct. But if it's stored the way most people store it, you've already started a countdown clock you didn't know was running. Stay for that one. It matters. Before we start, if emergency preparedness, food science, or long-term self-reliance are topics you want more of, hit subscribe. In the next 30 days, I'm releasing a complete rotation calendar you won't find anywhere else. Alright. Item 12. Item 12. Canned salmon. Most people building a protein stockpile reach for tuna first. That instinct is correct. But it's also incomplete, and the Mormon storage protocol points to something most home stockpiles don't have nearly enough of. Canned salmon. A 3-ounce serving delivers roughly 22 grams of protein. That puts it directly in tuna territory. But here is what separates it. Salmon carries EPA and DHA, the omega-3 fatty acids that are almost completely absent from a long-term storage diet, built around grains and beans. When you're eating from a stockpile for weeks or months, those fatty acids don't show up anywhere else on the shelf. Salmon is how you put them back. And if you buy it with the bones, which you should, you're also getting calcium. The bones are soft, fully edible. You will not notice them once they're mixed into anything. In a storage plan where dairy is limited, that calcium isn't a minor bonus. It's a meaningful contribution to a gap that opens up fast. What most people miss, the USDS is explicit on this. For commercially canned fish in an intact, undamaged can, no rust, no swelling, no dents on the seam, the food inside is safe indefinitely. Quality degrades over time. Safety does not. That distinction matters. Buy pink or red sockeye. Bones in. Water packed, not oil packed. That is the version worth storing. Item 11. Canned chicken. Here is a scenario worth thinking through. Power is out. The stove isn't an option. Water is limited. You have 2 cans in your hand. One requires boiling water in 20 minutes. One you open and eat. In that scenario, the food that needs zero infrastructure becomes the most valuable thing on the shelf. Canned chicken is the only protein on this list you can eat straight from the can in complete darkness, with nothing but a can opener. Commercial canning processes chicken at 240 degrees Fahrenheit. That temperature destroys Clostridium botulinum spores, the organism responsible for botulism, which is the reason improperly preserved food can kill you. Once that seal is intact, nothing gets back in. The process is not approximate. It is complete. Food bank documentation puts canned poultry at 2 to 5 years past code date source, not specified in reference material, consistent with general food bank guidelines. The USDA puts it beyond that in intact, undamaged cans. Here is what most people do wrong with this one. They buy broth-packed canned chicken to get more flavor. The broth adds sodium and makes the liquid inside far less useful. Buy it water-packed. The liquid in a water-packed can is drinkable. In a resource-constrained situation, that is not a trivial distinction. That liquid is hydration. Pour it into rice, into corn, into anything else on this list. Nothing goes to waste. Item 10. Canned tuna. You probably already have this one. And the fact that you own it is not an accident. It reflects a correct instinct you may not have been able to explain. The LDS Food Storage Guidelines list tuna explicitly in their protein category, alongside salmon, sardines, and mackerel. When you grab tuna, you are following the same logic the most documented storage system in American history arrived at decades ago. Here is how to do it better. Oil-packed tuna degrades faster than water-packed. Even inside a sealed can, fat oxidizes over time. The process is slow, but it's continuous. That oxidation is what turns stored food from something useful into something you pitch. Oil-packed tuna is a worse long-term storage item than water-packed tuna, consistently, and most people reach for oil-packed by habit. Second adjustment, if you're buying in quantity, chunk light beats albacore on mercury load. A single can here and there doesn't matter. But in a high-volume storage plan, where tuna might be eaten multiple times per week over months, the mercury accumulation difference between chunk light and albacore becomes relevant. Multiple food bank guidelines put tuna at 3 or more years past code date, indefinite safety in intact cans. The tuna you already have is almost certainly fine. Make the next purchase smarter, water-packed chunk light. Every single video on this topic tells you to store below 75 degrees Fahrenheit. Almost none of them tell you what actually happens if you don't. Here is the research that should fundamentally change where you store your food. Utah State University Extension, one of the most cited food storage research institutions in the country, has documented what temperature does to long-term shelf life. The finding, for every 10 degrees Fahrenheit above 70, shelf life roughly halves. Do the math with me. A sealed number 10 can of white rice has a 25-year shelf life at 65 to 70 degrees. Store that same can in a garage in Phoenix, where summer temperatures regularly hit 110 degrees Fahrenheit, that is 40 degrees above the baseline. Every 10 degrees halves it. 40 degrees of excess heat means you've divided that shelf life by 16. Your 25-year rice just became a rice you'll want to rotate within 18 months. This is not a minor footnote. This is a complete redefinition of your storage plan based on where you actually live. A basement in Minnesota and a garage in Arizona are not equivalent storage environments for the same product. The fix is straightforward: interior rooms, climate-controlled spaces, basements when available. If you don't have a basement, a central closet in an air-conditioned home is far superior to any garage or attic. Put a $15 thermometer in your storage area and check it in July. That one action is worth more than any single item on this list. Keep this in mind for every shelf life number in the rest of this video. Those numbers assume the temperature is right. Item 9. Canned corn and green beans. The protein layer is built. Now the other half of the plate and the part of the Mormon 3-month supply that most people either skip or dramatically understock. Low-acid canned vegetables. Corn. Green beans. Peas. Carrots. All of them. A cup of corn is 130 calories, 5 grams of protein, and meaningful potassium. That's not impressive in isolation. But green beans bring something different. They're high in vitamins K and C, and the fiber in both does critical regulatory work in a diet that would otherwise be almost entirely grain-based. Extended grain-heavy eating without adequate fiber is uncomfortable at best and medically problematic over time. The canned vegetables are not garnish. They are system maintenance. USDA guidelines confirm indefinite safety for low-acid canned vegetables in intact cans. Documented food bank guidelines put the quality window at 2 to 5 years past code date. That's generous, practical, and works perfectly within a rotation-based stockpile. Here is the detail most people miss entirely. The date printed on that can is the manufacturer's code date. It is not the date you bought it. It is not a safety expiration. It is a quality target set years before that can arrive on your shelf. Your rotation system cannot run on a date you didn't write. Mark the purchase date yourself, with a permanent marker, the day you bring it home. That date, the one you wrote, is what your rotation system actually tracks. Item 8. Canned tomatoes. This is the item that reframes the rules for everything else on your shelf, and most people are managing it completely backwards. The LDS food storage guidelines recommend diced, crushed, paste, and sauce. All of it. Canned tomatoes are the flavor multiplier in any storage system. They make everything else on this list more palatable. That is not a minor thing. When you're eating from a stockpile, food you actually want to eat is not a luxury variable. It is a compliance variable. But here is the chemistry lesson that most people in this space have never heard. Canned foods divide into two categories: high acid and low acid. High acid foods are those with a pH below 4.6, tomatoes, citrus, fruit-based products. The acidity is hostile to bacterial growth. That sounds like a pure advantage. Here's the problem. The same acid that suppresses bacteria also attacks the interior lining of the can over time. This is why the USDA confirms indefinite safety for canned tomatoes in undamaged cans, but also why the quality slope after 12 to 18 months is real and noticeable. It's not a safety cliff. It's a flavor and texture issue that becomes significant by the 2-year mark. With low-acid foods, the quality window is much longer. You can let those sit and rotate more slowly. With tomatoes, the Mormon principle of store what you eat what you store, is not just philosophy. It is the operational requirement. Buy them. Use them in your regular cooking. Replace them. Newest cans go to the back. Oldest come forward. The system does the rotation automatically if you set it up correctly once. Item 7. Canned peaches and pears. The LDS Preparedness documentation contains a line that most people read as a soft suggestion and almost no one takes seriously. It says, sweets can help with appetite fatigue. That is not a soft suggestion. That is a clinical observation written by people who had thought harder about prolonged crisis nutrition than almost anyone else in American history. Let me give you the research behind it. In documented disaster nutrition studies, caloric intake among affected populations can drop by 30 to 40% during prolonged disruptions. Consistent with disaster nutrition literature, specific study data varies by event and population, even when food is physically available. The mechanism is appetite fatigue. When every meal is functional and nothing is enjoyable, the neurological drive to eat weakens. People don't consciously decide to eat less. They just stop finishing meals. They skip. The caloric deficit accumulates over days and weeks into a genuine nutritional problem. The morale food on your shelf is not a luxury addition. It is an insurance policy against malnutrition in a situation where food itself is not the limiting factor. Canned peaches and canned pears are both technically high acid, which means the same 12 to 18-month quality window applies as tomatoes. Pears run slightly longer because of lower acid content. Buy both. Buy them packed in juice, not heavy syrup. The juice is drinkable, the sugar load is more controlled, and pears and juice represent one of the most undervalued budget buys in this entire category. And here is the note for later: the appetite fatigue issue doesn't get fully solved by adding fruit. The way you structure the variety in your overall stockpile matters, and that's something we'll address before the end. Item 6. Dehydrated potato flakes. Everything up to this point you bought at any grocery store. Starting here, the list changes, and the methodology shifts from pantry rotation into something built differently. Not the grocery store canister. Not the instant potato packets. Dehydrated potato flakes, sealed in a number 10 can with an oxygen absorber, purchased directly through the LDS Church's online store. 20-year shelf life. Confirmed in their official store documentation. A number 10 can is a large format steel can, roughly 1 gallon of volume, the kind you'd see in restaurant or institutional supply contexts. The LDS system packs these cans with food, seals them, and inserts an oxygen absorber packet that actively pulls residual oxygen out of the interior environment. That absorber drops internal oxygen below 0.1%. At that level, insect larvae cannot survive, including eggs already present in the food at the time of sealing. Oxidation halts. Microbial growth stops. The potato flakes enter that can with moisture content already below 10%, the threshold where microbial activity essentially ceases. You have 3 protection systems working simultaneously: oxygen elimination, moisture control, and physical barrier from the steel can itself, which is rodent-proof, light-proof, and crush-resistant. 20 years. This is the entry point into a different category of food preservation, and the next two items go even further. Before we get to the top 5, I need to stop here and do something almost no stockpile video does. Because right now, somewhere on someone's emergency shelf, there are 5 foods that are quietly failing, and the people who put them there don't know it yet. These are the most commonly stockpiled foods that do not belong in any long-term storage plan. Number 1. Brown rice. The bran layer that makes brown rice nutritionally superior to white rice also contains oils. Those oils oxidize. In documented food science literature, brown rice goes rancid within approximately 12 months of sealing, even in an airtight container, because no oxygen absorber can fully offset the oils already embedded in the grain itself. Every long-term storage program that has studied this, including the LDS system, migrated to white rice for this exact reason. It is not a nutritional compromise. It is a chemistry requirement. Number 2. Whole wheat flour. Grinding wheat releases the oils contained in the bran and germ. The intact wheat kernel, as we'll cover in a moment, protects those oils from oxidation and achieves a 30-year shelf life. Grind that same wheat into flour, put it in the identical container with the identical oxygen absorber, and you've cut the shelf life to approximately 10 years. The milling process exposes surface area that the whole grain kept protected. Store the kernel. Grind as needed. Number 3. Full-fat dry milk. The fat in whole dry milk oxidizes. It goes rancid in storage, often within a year, sometimes faster, even when properly sealed. The LDS system specifically uses non-fat dry milk because removing the fat removes the primary degradation pathway. The word non-fat on that can is not a diet choice. It is the mechanism that makes 20+ year shelf life possible. Number 4. Nuts and nut butters. Nuts are high-fat foods. Almond, peanut, walnut, all of them will go rancid in storage within 1 to 2 years, often sooner. Nut butters are the same. They are excellent for a 3-month rotation system. They do not belong in a long-term storage plan. If you have a sealed bucket of mixed nuts in a closet right now labeled emergency food, open it next week. You may already be past the window. Number 5. Store-bought crackers. Fat from shortening and oils used in commercial crackers, leavening agents that break down over time, and the tendency of crackers to absorb atmospheric moisture even through packaging. All of these combine to make crackers a 6 to 12-month item at best. They belong in a 3-month pantry rotation, not on a long-term shelf. Every one of those is currently on somebody's emergency shelf, purchased with good intentions and failing quietly. The Mormon system avoids all 5, not by accident, but because the protocol was designed around exactly this kind of lipid oxidation failure. Now, back to the list. Item 5. Dehydrated pinto beans. The Mormon long-term food storage system is built around 2 foods working together. This is the first one. Dry pinto beans, sealed in a number 10 can with an oxygen absorber. 25-year estimated shelf life per official LDS store documentation. Black beans and white beans carry the same format and the same shelf life. All of them belong in the same rotation. One number 10 can hold approximately 5.2 pounds of dry product. A cup of cooked pinto beans is 240 calories, 15 grams of protein, and 15 grams of fiber. Iron, potassium, folate. These are the micronutrients most likely to go deficient in a grain-heavy crisis diet, and beans address the majority of that list. But the deeper reason beans hold this position is what happens when you pair them with the number 1 item. Wheat and beans together form a complete protein. Every essential amino acid. No animal product required. The Mormon system didn't pair these 2 foods arbitrarily. That combination is both central to their storage doctrine and precisely correct in terms of nutritional completeness. There is one thing the reference materials sometimes gloss over and shouldn't. Beans require soaking and extended cooking time. In a scenario without reliable power, that means knowing how to use a pressure cooker, a Dutch oven over an open flame, or a retained heat cooker. The food is only as good as your ability to prepare it. Know how to use what you store. Buy a Dutch oven before you need one. Item 4. Non-fat dry milk. Here is the nutrient deficiency that will quietly develop in any storage plan built only around grains and beans, and the one item that closes it before it becomes a problem. A diet of wheat, rice, and beans is calorically dense and protein adequate, but it is critically short on calcium, vitamin D, and certain B vitamins. That deficiency doesn't announce itself immediately. It builds. Over weeks and months of a prolonged disruption, especially for children who need calcium for bone development and elderly adults, non-fat dry milk is how the LDS system closes that gap. Available in sealed foil pouches with oxygen absorbers, their documentation confirms shelf life at 20+ years under proper storage conditions. One serving reconstituted delivers approximately 300 milligrams of calcium, 8 grams of protein, and vitamins A and D. It works for drinking, baking, and cooking, and it integrates into the oats at number 3, the potato flakes at number 6, and most baked applications if you have access to the wheat at number 1. The critical distinction, stated plainly, you cannot use full-fat or whole dry milk for long-term storage. The fat oxidizes. Full-fat dry milk goes rancid in storage, often within a year, sometimes considerably faster even when properly sealed. The word non-fat is not a dietary preference. It is the mechanism. Remove the fat, remove the primary degradation pathway. One practical note from LDS preparedness documentation worth following: add vanilla extract when reconstituting. Cold water first, then powder, then mix, then chill before drinking. The taste difference is significant enough that it matters for daily consumption compliance, and compliance is the point. We are about to cover the 3 most important items on this list. But first, let's do the math that almost nobody in this space will actually calculate for you. You've heard the shelf life numbers: 20 years, 25 years, 30 years. But here is the question that matters practically, and that almost every stockpile video avoids answering concretely. How much do you actually need? One adult requires approximately 2,000 calories per day to maintain body weight and cognitive function. Over 90 days, the standard emergency preparedness target, that's 180,000 calories. Write that number down. Now apply it to the items on this list. White rice, which we'll cover in a moment, delivers approximately 1,700 calories per pound of dry product. To cover 90 days of caloric needs from rice alone, you'd need roughly 106 pounds of dry rice. That's approximately 20 number 10 cans. Most people buying 1 case of rice have bought 6 cans, a 9-day supply. Not 90. Pinto beans, cooking down to approximately 1,600 usable calories per pound dry, contribute another layer. A case of beans, also 6 number 10 cans, approximately 31 pounds dry, adds another 20 days of caloric coverage. Between 2 cases of rice and 1 case of beans, you are roughly 65% of the way to 90-day caloric coverage. The remaining 35% fills in from oats, potato flakes, canned proteins, and vegetables. The most common mistake in amateur preparedness is not buying the wrong food. It is buying the right food in the wrong quantity, with no math behind the decision. 3 cases of rice and 2 cases of beans, properly sealed, stored at the right temperature, covers the caloric foundation for one adult. That is your starting target. Everything else builds on top of it. Keep those numbers in mind as we finish the top. Item 3. Rolled oats. Rolled oats are the breakfast anchor of the Mormon system, and they are also the item on this list where the oxygen absorber is doing the most critical work of anything we've covered. Here is why that matters. Oats contain more fat than white rice or hard wheat. Not a large amount, but enough. And in long-term storage, any fat becomes a liability if oxygen is present. Without an oxygen absorber actively pulling residual oxygen below that 0.1% threshold, the fat in oats will slowly oxidize and eventually turn the grain rancid. This is why bulk bin oats from a grocery store, even sealed in a 5-gallon bucket, do not match what the LDS system produces. The bucket is a physical barrier. The oxygen absorber is the active preservation mechanism. Both matter, but removing the oxygen absorber and keeping only the bucket means the oats are working against you, slowly, invisibly, until the day you open that bucket and smell what oxidized fat actually smells like. Regular rolled oats outperform quick oats in this context. Less processing means less surface area exposed to the residual oxygen inside the can before the absorber does its work. Utah State University Extension research on long-term rolled oat storage confirms the 20-year figure in the LDS documentation. This is not marketing, it is corroborated research. One number 10 can hold approximately 2.4 pounds of product. A single dry serving, half a cup, delivers about 150 calories, 5 grams of protein, 4 grams of fiber, iron and B vitamins. And here is the cold soak note. If heat is unavailable, rolled oats can be cold soaked in water. Approximately 30 to 40 minutes in cold water produces a fully edible, palatable meal with no stove, no fuel. Of the 12 items on this list, oats are one of only 3 that work completely cold. That matters in the scenarios where stored food becomes most necessary. Item 2. White rice. This is the most important swap most people have never made, and it's one most people resist when they first hear it. White rice. 25-year shelf life and a sealed number 10 can with oxygen absorber. Approximately 1,700 calories per pound dry. 6 cans per case, approximately 32 pounds of rice per case. It is the most calorie-dense, lowest prep grain in any storage system, and the foundational calorie source around which everything else on this list is organized. Now here is the swap, and here is why the resistance to it is understandable but wrong. Brown rice is nutritionally superior in normal life. Higher fiber, more B vitamins, more micronutrients. That is not in dispute. But brown rice fails in long-term storage, and it does not fail slowly or ambiguously. The bran layer that makes it nutritionally superior also contains oils. Those oils oxidize. In the same sealed container with the same oxygen absorber under the same storage conditions, brown rice goes rancid within approximately 12 months. The bran layer's oils are embedded in the grain in a way that oxygen elimination cannot fully offset. White rice strips the bran away. That process removes the fat oxidation pathway entirely. What you lose in micronutrients, you recover from everything else on this list. The beans, the oats, the dry milk, the canned vegetables. What you gain is the grain that holds for 25 years and can anchor an entire storage system without failing. This is not a health question in a storage context. It is a chemistry question. The chemistry is clear. Item 1. Hard wheat. 30 years. That is the longest estimated shelf life of any product sold through the LDS Church's official store. Confirmed in their documentation. Not marketing language, a documented, tested figure backed by multiple food science extensions. Hard red wheat. Hard white wheat. Both work. Both hit the same 30-year mark in a sealed number 10 can with oxygen absorber. This is the cornerstone of the Mormon food storage system, and the reason is not tradition or doctrine, although both are present. The reason is structural. Why wheat and not flour? White flour in the identical container, with the identical oxygen absorber, under the identical storage conditions. 10. The difference is the intact kernel. The outer bran layer of an unground wheat kernel protects the endosperm, the nutritionally dense interior, from oxidation in a way that processed flour fundamentally cannot replicate. The kernel is its own packaging. Grind it and you release the oils, expose the surface area, and start a countdown clock that runs 3 times faster. Grind as needed. Never in advance. The act of grinding does not enhance what you have stored, it reduces it. 1 cup of dry hard wheat is approximately 380 calories and 13 to 17 grams of protein. And paired with the pinto beans at number 5, you have a complete protein covering every essential amino acid, with no animal product required. The Mormon system built wheat into the doctrinal core of its food storage program because the science validates it at every level. 30 years. Nothing else on this list comes close. Here is what this entire list has been building toward. The shelf lives you just heard, 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, are not manufacturer optimism. They are not marketing projections. They are the product of a specific documented and replicable protocol. And that protocol is straightforward enough that anyone can implement it. Airtight container, either a sealed number 10 steel can or a multi-layer foil pouch. Oxygen absorber packet inside the container. Storage temperature below 75 degrees Fahrenheit, ideally 65. Dry conditions, off concrete floors, away from any moisture source. That combination drops internal oxygen to below 0.1%. At that level, insect larvae cannot survive, including eggs already in the food at sealing. Oxidation stops. Microbial growth halts. The food is not preserved through chemicals or additives. It is preserved by eliminating the three variables that end shelf life: oxygen, moisture, and pests. Remember the neighbor from the beginning of this video? The one who cleared the shelf, hauled it all home, stacked it in the closet, and called it done? That person wasn't wrong to want to be prepared. The instinct was correct. The system was missing. The Mormon Church operates home storage centers across the United States. For decades, members could bring their own food, use industrial can sealing equipment on site, and leave with properly sealed number 10 cans at near cost. The equipment model at those centers has evolved over the years, but the products, the same wheat, rice, beans, oats, and potato flakes covered in this video, are still available through those centers and through store.churchofjesuschrist.org. No membership required. No religious affiliation required. No questions asked. The system that produces 30-year shelf lives has been publicly accessible the entire time. That is the actual secret. The principles that drive it are not complicated. Store what you eat what you store, rotate deliberately, build gradually. Don't go into debt doing it. These principles work not because they're spiritual, but because they're operational. They account for the most predictable human failure in preparedness, which is stockpiling things and then forgetting them. The rotation principle converts your storage from a closet full of anxiety into a living system that replenishes itself. Start with one case: wheat, rice, or beans, whichever one you'll actually use. Order it through the store, place it in a climate-controlled interior room off the concrete floor, and mark the year on the outside. Then add the next case. You don't need all 12 items at once. You need to start. If you already have at least one number 10 can on your shelf, drop a 1 in the comments. I want to know how many people watching this video are already further along than they think. And if you found this breakdown useful, the next video in this series covers the complete 72-hour bug-out bag, built on the same science-first methodology, not the gear catalog version you've seen everywhere else. Same approach, same specificity, different scenario. See you there.